Technology was supposed to make life easier. And for the most part, it did. Faster communication, instant information, the entire sum of humans' knowledge sitting in your pocket. What nobody predicted was that alongside every technological leap forward, there would be a proportional leap in the audacity of complaints. Tech support agents, the unsung therapists of the modern age, have sat patiently behind headsets and screens, absorbing a level of bewilderment that would dissolve most people's will to live. What follows is a curated catalog of real complaints, the kind that make you grip your chair, tilt your head slowly to one side, and quietly wonder whether civilization is running a quiet experiment in reverse. Buckle up because your faith in common sense is about to be thoroughly stress-tested. 1. A customer contacted tech support, furious, demanding to know why their brand new laptop was running so slowly. After a thorough 20-minute remote diagnostic, the technician discovered the machine was running 47 browser tabs, 3 video streams, a full antivirus scan, and a file backup simultaneously. The customer's response upon being told to close a few tabs was, and this is verbatim, "I shouldn't have to." No further explanation was offered, just the philosophical declaration that inconvenience itself was an unacceptable personal imposition. The laptop, for what it's worth, was doing its absolute best under the circumstances. 2. Someone filed a formal complaint with their internet service because their Wi-Fi signal did not reach their garden shed located at the far end of a half-acre property through 2 brick walls, a metal roof, and what the support ticket described as a decent amount of shrubbery. The customer had been told this was a coverage issue. Their counter-argument was that they were paying for unlimited internet, and unlimited, in their interpretation, meant unlimited distance as well. Radio waves, apparently, have contractual obligations that physics does not. 3. A printer support line received a call from someone who was outraged that their printer had stopped working. The printer had, in fact, run out of ink. The customer knew this. They had received the low ink notification 14 times over the previous 3 weeks. Their complaint was not about the ink. It was about the fact that the printer had the nerve to stop printing before they were ready for it to stop, as though the machine owed them a more convenient window of failure. 4. A man called customer service for a cloud storage platform to report that his files had been deleted. He was distressed. He was vocal. He was, unfortunately, the person who had deleted them. The agent walked him gently through the deletion log, which listed his account, his device, and a timestamp from the previous Tuesday at 2:14 in the afternoon. His response was a long pause followed by, "Well, somebody must have gotten into my account." The agent did not push back. Some hills are not worth the paperwork. 5. A tech support agent received a complaint that a customer's phone screen was cracked. This is, on its surface, a reasonable thing to be upset about. The cracking had occurred, however, because the customer had placed the phone on the floor, walked away, and then stepped on it. Their complaint was that the screen should be designed to withstand being stepped on by an adult. Their proposed solution was a full free replacement. Their tone suggested this was an obvious and entirely reasonable expectation. Somewhere, a materials engineer is quietly weeping. 6. And somehow we're still warming up. A software company's help desk received a ticket from a user who was upset that their laptop's battery life was only lasting 3 hours. The laptop in question was 6 years old, had been charged over 1,000 times, and had never had its battery replaced. The customer wanted to know what the company intended to do about the fact that batteries age. The answer, of course, is nothing, because that is simply what batteries do. Physics, again, declining to accommodate personal preferences. 7. A woman contacted her phone carrier, livid, because she had used her entire monthly data allowance in the first week of the billing cycle. When the agent pulled up her usage, they discovered she had been streaming 4 to 6 hours of high-definition video daily on mobile data despite having home Wi-Fi available. Her complaint was not that she had used the data. Her complaint was that she had been allowed to use it. She wanted to know why no one had stopped her. Be honest, have you ever been so certain you were the victim that you forgot to check what you'd actually done? 8. A gaming platform's support inbox received a lengthy, carefully written complaint from a user who had purchased a downloadable game, completed it in its entirety over a weekend, and then requested a refund on the grounds that the game was too short. The game's listed playtime was prominently displayed on the product page before purchase. It was not a hidden detail. The customer acknowledged this in the ticket, but argued that the playtime listed was an estimate, and estimates, philosophically speaking, are not guarantees. The customer had, by their own admission, thoroughly enjoyed the game. This detail did not appear to factor into their reasoning. 9. A broadband provider's support team was contacted by a customer who was upset that their internet had gone down during a storm that had knocked out power to the entire street. The customer's specific complaint was not about the outage itself. It was about the fact that their router, which required electricity to function, had turned off when the power did. They wanted to know why the router didn't have a backup. The agent explained that routers require continuous power. There was a silence. Then that seems like a design flaw. It does not. It is not. It is simply how electricity works. 10. A smart TV support agent spent 45 minutes on a call with a customer who insisted their television was malfunctioning because it kept showing ads. The television was streaming free content on a free platform that was explicitly visibly ad-supported. The customer had selected this service themselves. The complaint was that the ads were interrupting the content. The concept that the ads were, in fact, paying for the content they were interrupting did not appear to register. The free lunch was delicious right up until someone explained how it was being funded 11. This next one defies logic in a very particular way. A customer contacted technical support for a smart thermostat because their home was not heating up fast enough. After a full diagnostic, the agent discovered the thermostat was functioning perfectly. The issue was that the customer had set it to their desired temperature and then stood in front of a heating vent waiting for the air to reach that temperature instantaneously. Thermostats do not heat rooms on demand like a microwave. The customer's response was to ask whether there was a faster setting. There is not. There has never been. There will never be 12. A mobile phone carrier received a complaint from a customer who was being charged for international roaming. This is standard. What was not standard was that the customer had traveled internationally, used their phone internationally, and was now upset that international charges had been applied. They had not added a travel plan before departing. They knew travel plans existed. Their complaint was in their words, "Nobody told me I'd need it." They had been to this country 3 times before. They had paid roaming charges 3 times before. Each time, apparently, came as a complete surprise. 13. A laptop manufacturer's customer support team received a complaint that a machine had sustained water damage. The customer wanted a warranty replacement. The warranty specifically excluded liquid damage, which is standard across the entire industry. The customer's counter-argument was that they had only spilled a small amount of water on it, and small damage should be covered. The agent explained that liquid damage is liquid damage, regardless of volume. The customer then asked if they could submit a second claim describing it as humidity-related. This is not a loophole. This is fraud with extra steps and impressive confidence. Warn. A software customer support inbox received a ticket from a user complaining that the application had an error message they didn't understand. The error message in full read, "Low disk space, please free up storage." The complaint was that this message was too technical. The phrase "low disk space, please free up storage." This is the sentence that was deemed too technical. Written plainly in complete English asking for one specific action. Have you ever looked at a sentence that's simple and felt less confident in the future? 15. A customer contacted an e-commerce platform's tech support to report that the website was broken because items they had placed in their cart were no longer available. This does sometimes happen and is understandably frustrating. However, the items had been in the cart for 3 weeks without being purchased. The customer had been using the cart as a wish list. The complaint was that the site should have held the inventory for them indefinitely. Not purchased, not reserved, simply desired, and that, apparently, should be sufficient claim on global supply chains. 16. A subscription software company received a formal complaint from a customer whose account had been suspended due to non-payment. They had not paid, the invoice had been sent, multiple reminders had been sent. Suspension was listed explicitly in the terms of service as the consequence of non-payment. The customer's complaint was that the suspension had affected their work. The agent acknowledged this. The customer then asked if there was any way to restore access without paying the outstanding balance. There was not. This question was asked 3 more times during the same call, as though the answer might eventually change. 17. A customer complained to an internet provider that their internet speed was slower than the advertised maximum. This one sounds reasonable at first glance, until you learn that the customer lived approximately 4 miles from the nearest exchange, in a rural area on a copper wire connection, with 15 devices connected simultaneously during peak hours. The agent explained that advertised speeds are maximums achieved under optimal conditions. The customer said, "And I want you to really hear this. Then why do you advertise them?" This is objectively the most reasonable question on this list, and yet somehow it's being asked by someone who connected 15 devices and expected a miracle. 18. A woman contacted the support desk for a smart home device because her voice assistant wasn't understanding her commands. After troubleshooting, the agent determined the microphone was functioning normally. The issue was that the customer was issuing commands from a different room through a closed door, while a television played at high volume nearby, and was then surprised when the device occasionally misheard. She had also, the agent noted, renamed the device to a word that sounded nearly identical to 12 other words in common conversation, which meant it was activating constantly and responding to the wrong things. When this was explained, she asked the agent if they could update the device to be smarter. The device was a current generation model. It was, in fact, quite smart. 9. It somehow gets worse from here. A customer contacted tech support for an online banking application to complain that their bank balance was lower than expected. This is again on the surface a legitimate concern. However, after the agent walked through the transaction history, a process the customer had access to at any time, It emerged that the customer had simply made purchases they had forgotten about. Multiple purchases, over several weeks. Their complaint was that the app should have warned them they were spending money. The app did warn them, after every transaction, with a notification, which they had disabled. The balance was accurate. The spending was real. The notifications had been silenced. The outrage was immense. 20. A computer hardware manufacturer's support team spent 3 hours over 2 separate calls with a customer who was convinced their brand new desktop PC was defective because it made a sound when it started. The sound was the fan. Computer fans make sounds. They have made sounds for decades. This is not a fault. This is a feature. The machine runs hot if the fan doesn't spin. The customer had apparently never owned a computer before, or had owned one and never noticed. At the end of the second call, the agent managed to convince them the fan noise was the computer thinking. This worked. The customer was satisfied. Sometimes the truth is less useful than an analogy delivered with confidence. 21. A customer service team for a professional photo editing application received a complaint that the software was too complicated. This is fair. Professional photo editing software is, by definition, built for professionals, which means it carries the weight of professional complexity. What made this memorable is that the customer had purchased the most advanced tier of the software, skipped the tutorial entirely, opened the application, seen the interface, and filed the complaint within approximately 8 minutes of first launch. 8 minutes. They had not attempted to use it. They had looked at it and found it wanting. The software had existed, without complaint from its actual users, for over a decade. 2. We are entering a new tier now. A customer contacted a streaming platform support line to complain that the show they wanted to watch had been removed from the service. This does happen. Licensing agreements expire, content rotates, it's a known limitation of streaming. The customer's complaint was that they had been planning to watch the show at some point and now they couldn't. They had not started watching it, they were not midway through it. They had simply been aware that it existed on the platform and had vague intentions about it, and now they wanted compensation for the loss of a future they had never taken any steps to create. Grief, it turns out, can be preemptive. 23. A phone manufacturer received a complaint that a customer's phone was not functioning after being dropped in a swimming pool. The phone was not waterproof. The listing said it was not waterproof. There was a small print warning in the box about water exposure. The customer argued that phones are everyday devices and people live everyday lives, which sometimes include pools, and therefore water resistance should be implied even where it is not specified. This is not how manufacturing works. This is not how implied warranties work. This is not how water works. And yet the confidence with which this argument was delivered would have been impressive in almost any other context. 24. A customer contacted the support line for a professional video conferencing platform to report that their meeting participants couldn't see them clearly. The agent, through patient questioning, determined the customer was sitting with their back to a window in a dark room, meaning the only light source was behind them, rendering them effectively a silhouette on screen. When this was explained, the customer asked the agent if the software could be updated to fix the lighting. The agent gently explained that software cannot change the direction of sunlight. The customer asked if this was on the roadmap. It was not. It will not be. The sun has its own roadmap and does not accept feature requests. 25. A tech support agent received a complaint from a customer who was upset that they had been charged for a subscription they had forgotten they had. They had signed up over a year prior. They had been billed monthly for 14 months. They had not noticed because, by their own admission, they did not review their bank statements. Their complaint was not about the service. They couldn't even remember what it was for. Their complaint was about the year of charges. They wanted all 14 months refunded on the basis that forgetting about something should render it retroactively unauthorized. If this legal theory held, most of us would owe our gyms a very interesting conversation. 26. This one deserves a moment of quiet contemplation. A customer contacted support for a cloud backup service in a panic because they had lost all the files on their computer and needed them restored. The agent began the restoration process immediately. It then emerged that the customer had never actually enabled backups. They had installed the backup software. They had created an account. They had paid for the subscription for several months, but they had never completed the setup, never verified that files were being copied, and had assumed that proximity to backup software was sufficient protection. The files did not exist in the cloud because they had never been sent there. The customer wanted to know if there was any way the service could retrieve files it had never received. There was not. There is not. There will never be. 27. And here we are at the summit. A customer contacted technical support, Breathe, because their computer was too slow, and after a lengthy diagnostic process, the agent discovered the machine was 13 years old, had not been updated in 4 years, was running out of storage, had not been restarted in over 3 weeks, and contained what the technician described as an extraordinary amount of browser toolbars. When informed that the computer was by any reasonable metric very old and in need of replacement, the customer asked what the company would be doing to fix this. The agent explained that the company did not make this computer. The customer had purchased it secondhand from an unrelated seller nearly a decade ago. There was no warranty. There was no support contract. There was no relationship between this person and this company beyond a phone call that had now entered its second hour. The customer asked to speak to a manager. The manager, presumably a person who had made several interesting life choices to arrive at that moment, took the call. And there you have it. 27 encounters with a strain of confidence so pure, so uncut, so completely unbothered by the laws of physics, contract law, or basic electricity, that it almost circles back to being admirable. The technicians who handled these tickets are, without question, among the most patient people alive. They absorb the full weight of humanity's tendency to expect more than what was promised, more than what was purchased, and often more than what is physically possible, and they do it with a scripted smile and a ticket number. What these complaints have in common isn't stupidity. It's something more specific. It's the deep, abiding belief that inconvenience is someone else's fault, that reality is a negotiable starting point, and that somewhere in the fine print of existence there is a clause that says things should simply work out because you really wanted them to. So here's the question worth sitting with. Which one of these was the worst? Was it the person who forgot about 14 months of bank charges? The one who expected backups from software they never configured? Or, and think carefully, the person who called a company they had no account with to complain about a computer they didn't make and still asked for a manager? Drop your ranking in the comments. And if you've personally witnessed something that would make this list blush, share it, because evidently the research potential here is unlimited. If this script has you feeling either validated or deeply unsettled about the state of things, consider subscribing. New material, unfortunately, writes itself.